Good evening or afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Eight of the Weather Forecast by Age of the Forecast, and it's going to be another really detailed upload here on the potential for the upcoming change in the weather pattern for next week. But in this video, we're going to be specifically talking about just the severe weather setup on October 10th to the 11th, and as well October 12th into the 13th. So we're going to be watching out for the 2 days that are already highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center, and as well going to go into really great depth into the overall kinematics, the thermos, and all of that great stuff, so we can kind of determine the overall severity of this event and the timing and as well location. So if you guys live in the Oklahoma, Texas, and Kansas region, I would recommend you guys watch this video, as I'm going into really great depth and diving deep into this overall severe weather setup, so you guys can get a really good backstory on what's likely to occur. And then at the end of the video, I'll be focusing as well on the potential for the upcoming blizzard across the Rockies. But without further ado, let's get into the video. So we actually now have an enhanced risk here for the day 4 outlook, which will be obviously from Sunday into the Monday morning hours. So it's going to go from the 10th, valid from the 12Z and the 10th to 12Z into Monday morning here. So the main time frame we're going to be really watching out for this is going to be basically into really Sunday evening. I'd say is the best timing into the really overnight hours, basically pretty late into the night. Obviously now getting closer towards Monday morning. So we now have a 30% though, which for day 4 or anything past well, obviously 30% in general just signifies an enhanced risk for severe weather. So here's the enhanced risk. Obviously we actually only had a 50% yesterday, but now today they actually pulled in the 30%, or actually overnight they pulled in the 30%. So here's the 30% now for around 500,000 people. So it's kind of located in a little rural area within the southeastern and as well border within Texas. That's what we're going to be watching out for, most likely according to the SPC, a main area of severe weather with the enhanced worthy probability. So this is a 30 non-sig, but of course most likely as this gets into day 3, this will obviously be day 3 tomorrow. So at that point we'll actually see whether the probability increases, etc. But obviously it's going to most likely be a 30 hatched by tomorrow morning, and most likely be a little bit more widespread, I'd say, into I'd say honestly it should become a little bit further towards the west here, and this 50% actually increases in width as well. But of course, as of now, the 50% signifies a slight risk, and it's around 9.4 million people. That's going to be for Dallas, Fort Worth. So it actually includes the DFW area, Oklahoma City, Tulsa, and Arlington. So it actually includes some really big cities here, obviously, and it goes all the way toward the Arkansas border. But at that point, the event will most likely kind of just gust out and just become an overnight squall. So not going to be anything too crazy, anything kind of just east of Oklahoma and Texas shouldn't get anything too crazy. And then, of course, that 30% includes Sherman, Texas, Denison, Texas, Ada, Oklahoma, Durant, Oklahoma, and Bonham, Texas. So here's the overall now look at the actual description here. So obviously, looking at from Sunday, day 4 to Wednesday, day 7, the main areas to watch out for, the main days. So the medium range models are in relatively good agreement. So we're seeing some pretty good synoptic support on Sunday obviously the medium range models are obviously having really good agreement towards both really day 4 and day 7. So looking at the overall moving an upper level trough quickly eastward into the southern high plains ahead of the approaching trough. Low moisture will advect and as well eject northward across the East Texas, eastern Oklahoma, and western Arkansas. As is forecast by the European, a corridor to moderate instability is expected to develop from northeast Texas into eastern Oklahoma by early to mid-evening. Thunderstorms should first develop along the dry line, which obviously can be rather intense here, allowing for, like I said, pretty moderate instability, and growing upscale and moving eastward across the eastern part. So again, it's going to grow upscale at this point, just kind of gust out into a squall. So that's why the probability is kind of staying the way it is, and not going to expand really. I don't really see it much really expanding. I say eastward, so probably towards we get towards day 2. I don't see any significant movement towards the east on day 3 tomorrow. Supercells with large hail and wind damage will be possible. A tornado threat will also be possible. However, uncertainty still exists concerning the amount of instability that will develop and type of storms that will form. If a squall line organizes quickly, then the favorite severe threat would be wind damage and large hail. This time, confidence in a severe event is great enough to maintain the threat and at a 30% um, in parts of southeast Oklahoma and far northern Texas. And of course, then we have the the day six probability. Actually, no, yeah, this is a day six. I'm not sure why I'm kind of confusing myself here. It's been a long day, but yeah, day six. Day six, obviously, now includes 7 million people within this 50%. They will most likely, based on the support I've seen, they will most likely go a 30%. Most likely by the next day or so, based on the overall synoptic agreement. Although the European has kind of backed off a little bit within the 0Z with a lot less of an amped up little jet as well, with a lot less moisture, and actually holding it back basically a whole day. So there's still a lot of I wouldn't say a lot of uncertainty, but there's still kind of the lack of information. Of course, there is still synoptic support, and actually a good amount of synoptic support. Um, but it's kind of models now, especially the European, are basically starting to basically kind of, at least specifically the European, backing off a day with the slow movement of this trough. But of course, the 50% are rather large, including the Fort Worth area, Oklahoma City, including Norman, Oklahoma, Irving, Texas, Plano, Arlington, as well, including Lawn, Oklahoma. So we still have a pretty large area of 50%. And then, of course, obviously, let's go ahead and look here on Tuesday. Obviously, it's going to be the other day. An upper level low is forecast to develop across the central Rockies as an upper level trough moves across the southwestern U.S. A powerful 80 to 100 knot jet is forecasted by the GFS to eject northeastward across New Mexico and into southern plains. Ahead of the system, the level of moisture and instability will rapidly increase according to the GFS. Under this scenario, moderate instability would be expected to develop by the afternoon in much of central and east Texas, Oklahoma, and central and eastern Kansas. This would involve numerous thunderstorms developing just to the east of the southern and central plain dry line. Storms will quickly obtain. I do apologize for that, but let's now again looking at storms will quickly obtain a severe threat and move eastward across the region quickly to obtain severe threat. Sorry, oh my gosh, I'm reading all over the place. Okay, sir, oh my gosh, storms will quickly obtain a severe threat and move eastward this region during the late afternoon and early to mid-evening. Surface dew points in the lower to mid-60s actually pretty impressive, considering it is kind of merging towards the center or the midder portion of October, along with moderate instability and strong deep layer shear would support supercell development. Supercells would be capable of producing large hail, wind, and as well tornadoes. So it's going to be more of a tornado day for basically day 6, and a more of a huge wind and as well a hail threat, I'd say, based for upcoming day 3. So let's now get a look at the deeper overall kinematics and the overall actual little jet and the meridional flow with this negative tilted trough. Just basics here at 500 millibar. So it's going to be looking at both events here, specifically going to go really in depth into October 10/11th due to the fact that it's obviously in closer range and that the NAM is within reach, but obviously going to go into great depth still within October 12/13th. So here's we actually just skipped it a little bit. There we go. So here's October 9th. So we have that negative tilted, basically more, it's not really a meridian nor, it's kind of more kind of a less amped up trough with some basically zonal winds within this general vicinity. So you're going to be seeing mainly zonal winds, but really the strongest will obviously maintain just to the south of that low pressure itself, where we have the most amped part of that actual trough itself, with the actual dip and jet stream is. It's going to really eject pretty far towards the northeast here into Kansas early on in Colorado with 500 millibar winds or shear up to around 70 plus knots. As then I get towards October 10th into the basically morning hours, this is going to quickly eject now into a ready portion of the Texas Panhandle and all the way up into towards portion of the plains. But there's an actual low pressure itself right here, and obviously it's a lot less amped up. Actually, it's not really, it's really not crazy like the October 12th trough, but it's still obviously going to be still a favorable setup. Actually, it's going to bring some really high shear values. Although considering it's not super amped up, it's actually going to most likely even strengthen a little bit just before it actually moves over into the main area. And there you see that dip in the jet stream basically right there. And the high smash here will basically just be east of that dry line. Obviously, that's going to be in the really thick, warm sector we're expecting here. And by October, basically October 10th, October 10th, 21Z, there you see shear values up to around 60, 70 knots. But as well, by 21Z, that's when the actual storms will start to develop across Texas and Oklahoma. We're going to start seeing around 55, 50 knots already. So we're going to start seeing that development along the dry line here. And as we now get towards 0Z, that's when things are going to actually really start to begin. And especially by 03Z or 3Z on the 11th, that's when we start seeing that severe weather really amping up here. And definitely going to start seeing that peak of that severe weather going to be getting towards, obviously, the overnight hours. Going to start getting up to 75, almost 80 knots here. But obviously, the worst of the severe weather is expected to stay right here towards northern Texas and southeastern Oklahoma. For that reason, that really good severe weather, actually. And of course, now by even 60, it's going to get even basically higher shear values, and actually going to be seeing a lot more kinematic support on the mid-level. It's going to get up to around 80 knots directly over the southeast Oklahoma area. So definitely watching out as this, obviously, then this eventually, this cold front rapidly catches up with the dry line. And it's all going to kind of upscale. That's where we'll be seeing that big 30 sig wind threat, as we're going to watch out with some pretty good thermos and most likely support even a sig for hail. So going to continue to really watch out for this. But obviously now it's going to get towards October 13th or October 12th, which the date's kind of really switching on. Obviously watching out for the 12th into the 13th. So here's a look now at 21Z on the October 12th time frame. So obviously this is a lot more intense with the actual dip itself, but it's a lot less amped up than what it was a few days ago. You kind of see it's kind of more, it's still pretty amped up. It's still got some, obviously, some slight meridional flow, but it's definitely not as meridional as it was, I'd say, 2 days ago. But here's a look now, obviously, into now 0Z October 13th. Already starting to see that really good conditions across. Watching out for, of course, into Oklahoma, western Texas, and as well into central and southern Kansas, can get a widespread area of around over 60 knots. And then by looking at now 3Z, it's going to get even better. And by 6Z, that's where we see the highest amount of shear in this whole event. It's going to be seeing a really big overnight threat here. So going to really watch out for portions there from, I'd say, from south central and central Kansas all the way down to areas like basically northwestern Texas. Going to be seeing around 90 knots. This is going to be a lot stronger of a trough, and obviously it's not going to be as amped up as it was earlier, but still going to be seeing a really intense little jet dip, and it's going to allow for the huge support in the kinematics. I mean, these kinematics are basically locked in here, so this is going to be a very significant wind threat, as we're going to be watching out for even significant, I'd say, significant tornado threat as well, based on these kinematics and as well the thermals all together. We are watching out for a very significant event on all sides for both October 10th and as well into October 12th over into the 13th. So the first thing we're going to be looking at is obviously the temperature here, because obviously it's going to help allow for this cape to develop, obviously, because specifically since it's an October event, you're going to really need those really good thermos to really support this event. I mean, you're going to really need those thermos. It's going to be basically crucial without good thermos, including the dew points, the relative humidity, and the temperatures. There's not going to be a really good event. So here's a look now, October 10th, which is obviously the Sunday. So as we now get towards around 21Z, I mean, temperatures are going to be hot. We are talking about in the main area of severe weather. It's going to be obviously really favorable. I mean, temperature-wise, going to allow for some pretty good cape values to develop, especially with the Gulf of Mexico actually overall ejecting the moisture into the overall mid-levels. We're going to be seeing some pretty good cape in general, but temperature-wise, really good, getting into the mid and even upper 80s here. I mean, this is some really good temperatures, and as we now get towards, let's see here, into 0 and even 3Z, look at this. This is not too common whatsoever for early October. I know it's the South Central and the Central Plains, or in the South Central Plains, and they obviously are very hot for October, but this is still not common. I mean, for 3Z, we are still seeing high 70s in temperatures. I mean, the dew points are going to be pretty high as well into the mid and upper 60s across these areas. So we're talking some really good support here, even to, let's see here, 60. Into 60, we are still seeing temperatures across this area of the enhanced risk into the mid and lower 70s in temperature. This is definitely a pretty good low in the temperatures as well, going to really allow for the overday heating to develop. And with that really stubborn high pressure, it's going to develop and accumulate for days and days and days, basically, across Texas. So, you're going to be seeing some decent, not super high skyrocketing Cape numbers, but going to be seeing some decent Cape values that will be conducive for this event to obviously verify and probably be quite significant. So obviously pretty crucial. Actually, let's go back very quickly here towards the temperature. Or actually, no, we're gonna stay with the dew points here. But here's the overall look now at the dew points. Obviously, which is a very very important within both of these events. So October 10th now. You see by 18Z starting to see a lot of that moisture from the Gulf of Mexico really ejecting quite quickly toward the north. There you see developing their dry line. Gonna be seeing that dry line basically like that. There you see that dry line, and it causes that really strong and obviously apparent and visible deviation between between the overall dew points. So, gonna be seeing already. I mean, we're talking some high and mid 70s on the Gulf Coast, which is obviously really a high considering it's October. So, gonna be seeing some really good thermos. And as we now get towards 0Z, this setup's gonna dramatically really just become a lot better. There you see this very intense dry line starting to set up here across central and western Texas. And there you see this really good warm sector. This is a very, actually, let's redo that. This is a very good and actually pretty large warm sector here. So I'm going to watch out for some severe weather across this region. I mean, this is a very good and large warm sector. There you see that really good ejecting Gulf of Mexico moisture. Really good dew points as well, really good temperatures. And there you see that really unstable air kind of forming right along that dry line. So you're going to be seeing some really good severe weather across northeast Texas and southeastern Oklahoma, seeing dews into the upper 60s as well lower 70s by 0Z. And then by obviously 3Z, that will continue to increase. Going to be seeing into, like I said, the lower 70s here, 71 degree dew points, 70 degree dew points. I mean, this is a really absolutely great setup. I mean, look at that deviation basically from basically the high 60s to the lower 20s, just like that. A very intense dry line. That's going to really allow for this storm to really, or these storms to really dramatically, really develop quite quickly. And watch out as well for even some surface-based supercells before this cold front catches up with the dry line and then gusts the storm out. But let's now look at some standings here. Let's look at some standings on 03Z right here, the Texas and Oklahoma border. And that's where you have a 71 degree dew point. 71 degree dew point reading here. I mean, it's some crazy thermos. We're talking obviously some mid 80s in real time temperature, obviously, and then obviously some really high dews. But look at this standing here. Let's move this just a little bit further up. I mean, look at this standing. This is a pretty. This is actually not shabby of a soundy here. So see a pretty decent hodo there with that. Obviously that kind of curving to the right like that. That actually we are gonna be seeing some pretty good amount. Pretty tight, elongated hodo here. So that's definitely a pretty good sign for some severe weather. As well, look at these kinematics. These are some really good kinematics. Gonna be seeing obviously some pretty intense, almost basically just a really weak southeasterlies, and with the overall veering with height, we're gonna be seeing this basically kind of starting to go basically more towards the north, more towards veering to the northwest, and that's where we're seeing a lot of veering with height, which is a very good sign with this severe weather. But seeing some really good kinematics again into the 3 kilometer time area. We're talking about around 40 knots, and the upper levels are getting up into the 70s. So we're seeing some really obviously pretty intense upper level support and mid level support with the kinematics. As well, Cape is not too shabby. I mean, 1400 is not too shabby, and there's a little bit of capping inversion out here. A little bit of capping, a little warm area, a little warm wall at around 850 millibars. But with the amount of forcing we're talking about, the overall instability, we're going to be most likely be seeing this cap to break. Obviously, we're not going to be watching out for a huge tornado outbreak or a main tornado day for this event, but we're going to be watching out for some scattered tornadoes. Wouldn't doubt we do have a 5% for tornadoes when it comes to the day one for this. As well, seeing some pretty good storm relative helicity, getting to the 400s. I mean, this is definitely not a bad sounding whatsoever, actually. It's a really good sounding. As we now go further now into 60, that's what the really good time frame is going to be. Let's go back to 60. This is a really good time frame. This when the shear is at its highest. And just look at this right here. I mean, we're seeing some really good thermos here as well. Obviously, we're seeing both thermos and the kinematics kind of stacking up and locking up together. So this is obviously going to pretty come together to be, I say, a pretty significant event. Obviously, by far the wind will be a big threat, and as well, we're not going to be seeing too shabby. As well, a hail threat most likely be anywhere from a 15 sig to most likely a 30 sig, but I'm more confident with a 15 sig and then a 30 sig wind. But here's this sounding. I mean, the Cape could be a lot better, but obviously Cape on the GFS tends to be pretty low here. But let's kind of quickly now go towards the 13th here, because we're kind of wasting a lot of time on the 10th. But here's the October 12th on 18Z. There you see that really fat. We're talking about really fat and thick warm sector here. Going to be seeing early on by 18Z already seeing dews into the 70s, as well as seeing a really intense dry line starting to build up here. It's going to get a lot more intense of a dry line as we get towards around 0Z. Going to be seeing a really rapid kind of just advection between the dews, as well as the overall real-time temperatures kind of setting up from Kansas all the way down to areas like Texas. And going to be seeing again a really good and large warm sector all across Kansas, Oklahoma, and into northern Texas. Of course, the dews are going to get pretty high all the way as far north as Kansas. 65-degree dew points all the way up there, which is obviously really uncommon for this time of year. But look at this side, this 60 setup, very intense dry line. The low pressure to be all the way up here. You're going to see this dry line here, this cold front kind of up here like that. There's a cold front. There's a dry line. That's basically where it's going to be. There's a main low pressure. There's a kind of more other low pressure hanging up right here. And then the warm front basically right here. So you're going to be seeing a really good and large warm sector obviously all across southern Kansas into much of Oklahoma and northern Texas. You're going to be seeing some really good potential. But let's go back to 3Z for a second. I'm gonna be looking at some standings here. Let's look at a standing over here in central Oklahoma at 68-degree dew points. I mean, obviously the thermo temperature wise are gonna be there. The dews are gonna be there. Relative humidity is gonna be there. I mean, look at this. This is actually a really good sounding. Actually, it's a really good hail sounding as well. A really good hail sounding. Right here within 500 millibars, getting a really favorable kind of dip there within the dews. 14 or almost 1400 K, very weak cap. I mean, as well, gonna be seeing some pretty good storm relative helicity, some pretty good shear. But look at these kinematics. This is a really good looking kinematics, and it's a pretty strong shear and good upper level support. But I mean, yeah, it's not looking too shabby whatsoever. Obviously, this is definitely a pretty good sounding. Let's now go a little bit closer now into areas like, let's go towards maybe the right here towards the border of Texas and Oklahoma. There could be a lot better soundings, but I don't want to make this video too long. Obviously, as we're breaking up this setup, very specifically, I'd say the least. But yeah, here's another really good sounding. But let's now look at the NAM 3 kilometer for the or the overall NAM in general, not the NAM 3 kilometer, but the NAM in general for the 10th event. You can see, look at the 10th now. Actually, the NAM is going absolutely mental with this dry line here. Very intense dry line, but a little bit set up a little further southward. So that's going to really move this threat towards a little bit further south compared toward the GFS. But look at 0Z. I mean, look at these dews into 78-degree dews. I mean, 78. That's a really juicy warm sector as we now get to October 11 again. It stops right here at 0Z. I mean, look at this right here, 65 dew points. I mean, this is a really good setup here according to the NAM. Let's just go right here, for example. Like I said, looks like the NAM is taking this event further southward compared to the GFS, so we have to really watch out whether this 50% could expand further southward. I mean, look at this really good sound. This is a really good sounding, actually. I mean, these kinematics are really good. Seeing some southeasterlies, seeing some pretty good veering as well. I mean, the NAM actually wants to have a really significant tornado event, 2,200 Cape. Very weak cap inversion. I mean, look at this really strong EML as well. So watching out for even some significant hail. As we see significant cooling with height as well. I mean, this year could be a lot better in the lower levels, but really, I mean, we're talking extreme upper level support into the 60s at around, let's see here, at around 8 kilometers. Then they're going to be seeing into the 50s as we get towards the LCL EL, which is going to be basically right here. That's where the EL is, right there. This is where the EL is right there. So that's what we're going to be seeing as well. Some pretty high amounts this year, but some good advection, really good. That's a really good hodo. But like I said, I mean, the NAM wants to have a pretty good event pretty far south. I mean, let's go towards like just like an hour south of DFW, which is obviously not really anywhere close to that 15% stopping. While the NAM is really taking this event pretty far south. I mean, look at this. This is actually it's not the best looking standing, but I mean, it's all right. I mean, obviously, let's now go towards the Texas border with Oklahoma. That's going to be the main area to watch out for. And again, it's scary the fact that NAM's showing this already, and it's not even the main hours, which will be 3 and 6C, obviously, into Monday morning. But look at this. This is a really, really good sound. I mean, look at those kinematics. Look at that really good advection, obviously. Seeing a really good inverted V sounding as well. So a pretty significant wind threat with this inverted V. Obviously, pretty significant hail likely. I mean, this is a pretty good hail sounding as well. This is an all-around good sounding for, this is around a 5% torr, probably a 30 sig wind, and as well, I mean, I say 15 sig hail. This is a really good sounding to support that. But of course, there's a lot better kinematics within the, I'd say, within the other event, which would be October 12th. And then, of course, we can't forget about the snowstorm that's going to be developing from this basically same trough and the same significant dip in the jet. So, going to start seeing some snow developing as early on as basically the next, let's see here, I'd say into really early into the week, really Sunday, going to start seeing some scattered snow showers developing across ports of British Columbia, developing there across Alberta, and then moving into the Rockies. By early Monday, going to start seeing as well some snow developing, some scattered snow showers, obviously that really cold air and leftover moisture. We're going to be seeing some pretty good amounts of snow developing, those highest elevations across areas, obviously to northern Idaho and far western Montana. But, sorry guys, I almost just choked on my saliva for a second there. But as we see a low pressure now developing, obviously this is going to be the low pressure, both with the severe weather and with the snow. As this low pressure, we see developing low pressure and a pretty strong low pressure. And obviously, as this huge high pressure, obviously that really big cold, Arctic blast maker, as it continues to push a lot further to the east in this cold front, actually surpasses basically the low pressure itself, kind of to right here. That's where a lot of that snow is going to start to become a lot more widespread and a lot less in the higher elevations. You may start seeing some snow down to Casper, all the way down to portions of southwestern Utah. And as when I get towards October 12th, around the late morning hours, continue to see this low pressure strengthening. This high pressure is rapidly moving to the south, so that's going to allow for this cold air to dramatically, I mean, obviously cold fronts move faster than warm fronts, so this cold front is going to really be a really huge fast mover. That's going to allow for this storm to really mature very quickly, allowing snow to go as far from North Dakota all the way down to the Four Corners states, watching for some significant snow across Rapid City, across areas like Gillette, Cheyenne, into areas across much of Wyoming in general. And as this low pressure continues to strengthen here, and as this front, this high pressure is basically right on the back of the storm, we're going to be talking about some really heavy snow on the west side of the system here. As you see that really cold and strong, or that really strong low pressure and that really cold air right behind it. We're going to be talking about a really weird type setup, kind of a March type setup. Storm-wise, going to be seeing some snow from basically Rapid City, North Platte, or not North Platte, but areas like far western Nebraska. Even Denver is actually seeing a pretty big uptrend, and then going to start getting some snow into areas as far east as North Platte, and even central South Dakota can get in the action. I mean, look at this huge uptrend for areas pretty far to the southeast compared to yesterday. I mean, look at yesterday, Billings, Montana went from basically 4 feet to basically less than half a foot. I mean, look at this huge uptrend towards South Dakota and Nebraska, huge uptrend for Denver. So we're seeing a lot of inconsistency within this location, but overall watching out for some very significant snowfall across the west, and specifically watching Wyoming, that's where we've had the most consistency with the most snowfall. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys later.